thing about Japan is that a business visa doesn't do anyone any favors if you're a foreigner. So I don't know how much research you guys have done, but basically, hi, I'm Loretta, and this is how I made it in Japan. A little backstory on me, where I came from. I'm originally all East Coast. I was from Virginia, and then I went kind of by means of New York, eventually to Japan. But after I graduated college, I basically stayed in New York for 6 years or so. What made it make sense for me really was the MEXT scholarship, which is like a Japanese government-funded scholarship that brings talent from other countries to universities in Japan. If you had told me just to go to Japan and just like try my best, I don't think I would have done it because, you know, I want to be successful, I want to thrive. So I needed a real legitimate reason, and the scholarship just made it make sense because not only were they paying for everything, so obviously this is a very generous opportunity, but on top of that, they were paying for my dog and my husband. So that just kind of sold it for me. One thing that really served me well when I came to Japan and before was like keeping up with people, Japanese people specifically. So you can be successful in Japan in like an expat community, you can be in a blended community, you can be in a Japanese community, but I really feel that you will have a much easier time if you make connections with Japanese people, with your actual community. So for me, I was able to really hit the ground running because of a homestay that became my friend, that became my landlady, that became like my mentor, and etc. So, but these relationships happened because every time her birthday or New Year's or Christmas or something like that happened, I'd send her a card or I'd send her an email and slowly watch the technology grow with us. But, you know, don't forget the power of someone's birthday, their name, and their contact, and making sure you just reach out to them saying, I'm thinking of you, because that's when those little flowers bloom for you. So, yeah, remember birthdays and names. So in terms of finding these resources while you're still abroad, the meetup groups like we were talking about, things like actually, if you're thinking of moving, try moving to a city that has a bit more of a global flair. You know, see if there's a tea shop, or even Googling something like origami. There's like a lot of origami studios and things like that, and just finding your local whatever it is, because there are huge communities abroad, and you know, you should really tap in if you can. I know I've had weird friction at times, just knowing like how far do I need to lean in to like acting local or like still being me. And I know that when I first moved here, I was really big on being like, you know, I am the only representative of a Black woman in Japan, so I better have it tight. You know, I was really like worried about being like the best impression that, you know, I might be the only person that someone meets here. But I kind of went so far to the other side. I was always like really polite and nervous and like overly like scared of offending people, and I didn't realize like Japanese people aren't interested in like majime. Majime is like the word for like serious and like earnest. They don't care about majime foreigners. Like that's cute, but that's not why they wanted you. They wanted you because you're something different. They want your personality, your unique identity. One of my bosses, who's now my mentor, basically was like, I want more of you. Like, why are you acting like someone you're not? Like, I want you. Where are you? And with YouTube, I can like obviously be me when I want to, but even like in professional spheres and dancing that line of what's okay, I got pretty awkward, pretty cringy. And but it's been fun recently, just kind of learning that I can be more of myself. I'm not quite there, but just kind of like really discovering who I am in Japan. So my career elevator pitch, it's not that short. So basically in New York, I did a lot of like basically roll out like startups that started at about 4 people and building it to about 50 people. And then we would like leave it. It was like a group of us. That's why we're like the startup junkies. We would have an idea, make it explode, and then just like leave and move on to something else. So the specific industries didn't really matter as long as it was trending or making money. It was just the idea of like, how do you grow and like do market entry? My elevator pitch is really complicated because what I do is whatever they still need. So now basically I am a media digital marketing consultant for a number of different companies in Tokyo. And basically it's anything from getting an app out to market, it's getting a product out to a different audience, it's getting an idea onto or off the paper and into something digital, you know, things like that. And I still have many hats. There's like not a real word for it in English. They call it kenkyusei in Japanese, which means like audit student. But that just basically means you have the freedom to like study and do research while you're figuring out like your program at that school. And when I was actually at the school, this wasn't in Tokyo, this was in Yokohama. So there's like 3 foreigners in my department. It was me, a guy from, Paraguay, and a girl from Russia. So it was the 3 of us, and most of us 2 of them didn't really speak English, so it was like weird Japanese struggle bus in the back of the class. I got a lot of comments, for example, I made a YouTube series talking about like my schooling here, and I got a lot of comments asking like, was it so weird that like, did you have trouble making friends on campus? Did you make friends with Japanese people? And honestly, I told them like, no, well, I had my little group of friends, and at first, and they would ask me why didn't I like dig in or like make more friends in the community, and I basically was like, oh, I did, and I want people to know. I find that like a lot of Americans specifically tend to take a defensive idea of like having friendships or like meeting new people. Like, why didn't they say hi to me? Why didn't you talk to me? That's like, was it because I'm foreign? It's like, no, you're the odd one out. You're the one who stepped out of your boundaries. So part of that experience is literally getting out there, and you have to say hi, you have to start talking to people and tapping on their shoulders. So that's I think my first year we were in this like group of 3 people, and then I got sick of that and just started like, sitting at different tables at lunch or going to different departments and like, oh, drop my pen and, pretended to like make conversation. But you will do yourself a great service if you just stop expecting people to do things for you and just literally do it yourself and then delegate. So let's talk visas. This is kind of the interesting part, because I wanted to do a business visa. I wanted to do something that allows more freedom. But then the thing about Japan is that a business visa doesn't do anyone any favors if you're a foreigner. So I don't know how much research you guys have done, but basically there's a stip that you have to have like a real brick and mortars office. You have to have so many employees after like the first year, and et cetera. So it's not like when you're in your home country where you can just drop an LLC or an S Corp in Delaware and like pray to God your taxes are right. It's not like that. Like you have to actually have like a full entity here in Japan. So I decided to go a different route, and I'm on a work visa, so it's still a work visa. But you can actually do what looks like a freelancer type thing as long as you have full transparency with everyone who's on board. So in my last year when I was a student, I hired a lawyer, which is not that impressive here. It's just like what you got to do. So I hired a lawyer, and she basically said, these are your contracts. You need to go to each and every one of these companies and say, this is what I need, this is what I need, this is what I need. And if they really want you to stay, they'll make it happen. So that's what we did. And it looks like a freelance visa, but it's basically just a work visa with full transparency across the board. For the work visa, if you're doing freelance, the more contracts you have, the better it looks, because it looks like you're like robust. But for the highly skilled visa, which is like the top-notch bread and butter before like PR, basically, that looks terrible, because they either want you to be a highly skilled person hired by a company, or they want you to be a business, and it has to make sense. They don't like this idea of someone just kind of like floating in between. And the reason I tried to do it that way was because if I do the highly skilled visa, I have permission to do business without having to do the business visa with the office. Honestly, at the end of the day, it just depends on the mood of your immigration officer. So you just try and try again. Okay, so part of my transition was not just me, it was also transitioning my YouTube channel and my LLC and the entity that I set up back in the States. Honestly, it's not that complicated. A lot of people think, adulting, taxes, and all that 101 is very difficult. It's not that difficult. There are even people, for example, if you just Google someone who's like Japanese in New York or wherever you are, they'll kind of understand the whole abroad aspect of what you're doing. So in terms of like the actual entity, it just stays there, and I'm able to basically operate in the States or in Japan or wherever I am. And it's still like things basically, it's like any business account, things stay separate wherever they are, and then you file and you do your books. The only thing I've noticed is that a lot of people like to use LLCs or foreign entities to kind of like catch their extra hustles and whatever it is to manage their hustles. And You can do that really easily for about 5 years. And then after that, Japan really wants to dig into what you're doing. They want to see like what money are you also making abroad. So there's kind of like a sweet spot. It's like you move to Japan your first year, you pay no taxes because you didn't exist before. Then the second year you're like you learn how to do your taxes. Then you get your job. Then you get your nice like 3-year visa. And then suddenly someone's asking about your taxes back in your home country. So it's like by year 5, you're like, wait, what? But at least for Americans, there is basically a treaty that if you file it in one country or the other, you can get a deduction for the other country. So it's not like you get double taxed unless you're not doing your books right. So do your books and get your write-offs. Basically for me, I started YouTube basically because I wanted to practice Japanese. I was still in New York. I wanted to, it was different back then. People in the comments would just give you feedback. So there was a weird like trend originally where if you would just speak in a foreign language, people would give you like feedback. And that was how I practiced. That was like my audio diary. So that was a lot of fun. And when I came to Japan, obviously that made no sense. And I was homesick. So I got in this kind of weird, like, well, now what do I do? Turn the camera this way and show you where I am? But I'm still kind of figuring it out because, at the rate I post, trends are already changing anyway. So, like we said earlier, just be yourself, have fun if you're trying to be a YouTuber. And people are not interested in anything but you. It's literally YouTube. That's one thing I've seen across the 10 years that I've done it, is that at the end of the day, it doesn't have to be sensational or crazy. It just needs to be you, like your most authentic, maybe extreme, but most authentic self. One of the most common emails and comments I get from people is from Black women who basically say, I want to go to Japan, but I'm scared. What is it like being a Black woman? Am I going to encounter some sort of racism, or is it going to be difficult to be me? And honestly, it makes me mad because you can hear the American in that email. I'm like, that's an American existence. And I wish you could just take a moment to just step outside and try somewhere else. It doesn't even have to be Japan. Just like step out and you'll actually realize that whole thinking, like obviously I'm not saying it's all flowers and roses, but that construct of who am I going to be as a Black woman abroad? No one cares abroad. Because here's the thing, nobody is used to Black women abroad. It's not a thing yet. So one thing I found in Japan is that I had the freedom to be really like fluid. I could define who I actually was to these people. So when I go into an office place, like if you're the white guy, they have an idea of what a white guy should be in Japan. They have an idea for what a Black guy might be. So I'm sorry guys, I can't speak to that. But for a Black woman, it's a specific opportunity actually to just be you, and nobody knows what that is until you tell them. So just don't be afraid, get out there and just have fun, honestly. It's cool. So that's all I have to say.